Somewhere right now, a surgeon who routinely performs life-saving procedures cannot initiate her tax return. A software engineer has delayed sending a 2-sentence email for 21 days. If you have experienced this exact reaction, society often diagnoses you with a character flaw. You are lazy. You lack discipline. If you applied sufficient effort, you would complete the task. Neurological research contradicts this explanation. Procrastination is not a moral failing or a deficiency in willpower. In this video, we examine the neurological mechanisms that compel your brain to avoid priority tasks along with 4 scientific techniques to override this response. The neuroscience of conflict, the battle inside your brain. Whenever you encounter a high-friction objective, 2 distinct neurological structures engage in direct conflict. First, consider the amygdala. This primitive structure processes emotional responses, fear detection, and survival reflexes. Its sole objective is threat avoidance. The primary issue is functional misinterpretation. The amygdala evolved to detect physical threats, such as predators. It cannot differentiate between physical danger and psychological discomfort such as complex spreadsheets, public speaking, or administrative paperwork. When an assignment presents ambiguity, boredom, or complexity, the amygdala categorizes the task as a threat and triggers a fight-or-flight response. That sudden surge of resistance is an active distress signal. Opposing the amygdala is the prefrontal cortex, located directly behind your forehead. This region executes logical reasoning, long-term planning, decision-making, and executive function. When the amygdala triggers a stress response, the prefrontal cortex attempts to apply logic. This project poses no physical danger. We can complete 10 minutes of research. Procrastination occurs because the amygdala transmits neural signals rapidly and intensely. The prefrontal cortex transmits signals more slowly, requiring conscious cognitive effort. In rapid decisions, the speed of the amygdala overrides logical execution. Dopamine pathways and present bias. Neural conflict is only the initial phase. Chronic avoidance stems from dopamine signaling and temporal perception. When you abandon a stressful assignment to view social media feeds or reorganize your workspace, your brain releases dopamine. This neurochemical release produces immediate relief by eliminating the perceived threat. This establishes a reinforced neurological feedback loop. 1. Trigger. An impending deadline creates emotional distress. 2. Behavior. You shift attention to a low-friction activity. 3. Reward. Immediate neurochemical relief and dopamine release. Your brain records this outcome. Task avoidance, successfully reduced distress. Repeat this behavioral pattern during future discomfort. Additionally, human cognition is governed by present bias, the tendency to prioritize immediate gratification over long-term benefits. Completing an objective 3 weeks in the future offers an abstract reward. Consuming digital content provides immediate neurochemical stimulation. Brain imaging studies reveal an additional phenomenon. When individuals visualize their future selves weeks or months ahead, functional magnetic resonance imaging demonstrates activation in the exact neural regions used when processing unfamiliar individuals. When you defer a task to tomorrow, your neural network processes that future version of yourself as a separate person. The 4 science-backed interventions. Because procrastination is an emotional regulation failure rather than a time management error, forced exertion is inefficient. The primary objective is to reduce threat perception so the amygdala remains inactive. Here are 4 evidence-based interventions to adjust your neural response. Fix 1. Reduce subjective scale, microstepping. The amygdala activates based on perceived task magnitude and ambiguity. Drafting a research paper triggers threat assessment. Opening a word processor and writing 1 sentence falls below the amygdala's activation threshold. Deconstruct any complex objective until the initial action requires negligible cognitive effort. Executing that initial micro-step eliminates starting friction and initiates momentum. Fix 2. Establish empathy for your future self. Because the brain categorizes your future self as a stranger, you must deliberately bridge this cognitive gap. Before postponing an action, spend 10 seconds visualizing your exact circumstance tomorrow, specifically the stress created by delay versus the relief generated by execution. Establishing this mental connection reduces temporal discounting. Fix 3. Downregulate threat sensitivity, mindfulness. In an 8-week neuroimaging study, participants engaged in daily mindfulness techniques focused on non-judgmental awareness of emotional states. Post-study brain scans revealed structural neural modifications. The physical volume of the amygdala decreased, while functional connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and emotional centers increased. Regular observation of uncomfortable emotional states physically alters neural architecture to reduce threat reactivity. Fix 4. Tolerate the initial avoidance impulse, surfing the urge. When an impulse to abandon a task occurs, pause. Neurochemical analysis indicates that the peak physiological intensity of an impulse lasts between 10 to 20 seconds. Explicitly naming the internal state aloud, stating, "I am experiencing an impulse to avoid this task," engages the prefrontal cortex, restoring executive function while the emotional response dissipates. Working with your brain. These 4 strategies do not rely on guilt, self-criticism, or forced effort. They succeed because they align with human neurobiology rather than fighting millions of years of evolutionary design. When you observe task avoidance in your daily routine, suspend self-judgment. Recognize the response. This is a primitive neural defense mechanism attempting to minimize discomfort. Reduce the initial step size, tolerate the 20-second emotional wave, and allow executive control to engage. If this analysis clarified your behavioral patterns, select the like button and state which intervention you will test first in the comments. Subscribe for our upcoming analysis, where we address a secondary challenge: why cognitive understanding does not always translate into immediate behavioral execution. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next analysis.